Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, the unfamiliar, nostalgic feel of me recording after watching a European race in the middle of the night. This was Giro dell'Emilia, not a stage one, it's a one-day race around Bologna, finishing on the San Luca climb. It's actually a really attractive race. They do two longer climbs earlier, but there's never anything that really happens there. It's 200 Ks in total. The main part of the race is 5 reps of the San Luca climb, which is 2Ks at 10%. They've used it in the Giro a couple of times. It was, I think, the climb that Roglic and Campenaerts, their Giro d'Italia, had a time trial on it. And last year, Roglic just went nuclear on this. Almeida and Evenepoel were attacking him. Great race. The only problem is the rights have been with Rai for a number of years, and they don't broadcast it outside of Italy. We'll talk about that maybe. Actually, no, I won't talk about it. I'm sick of talking about it. It's just a joke because the start list is ridiculous to not have this broadcast overseas. Pogačar here, Martinez, Adam Yates, Simon Yates, Enric Mas, David Gaudu. The list goes on and on, but UAE were probably the strongest overall team with Micah Hirschi, Ulisi, Pog, Formolo, ridiculous team. So it's a tune-up for Lombardia, Benji. But Roglic won, didn't win Lombardia last year. What did you think UAE's tactics would have been going into the race with Ulisi and Pog? Do you think just smash for Pog?
I think smash for Pog. I think Pogačar is still on the standard of a leader in races like this as well. And we saw them really classify that the second we went towards the San Luca climbs. Well, in this race, we know that they've got a strong team. You mentioned it. They've got a strong team with riders that on paper, 2 years ago, if we saw Hirschi, we would say potentially that rider could even compete for the victory in Emilia. It's a hilly, punchy race, but it goes more towards the climbers usually, not necessarily the pure punchers because of all the altitude meters. And we saw this race with a breakaway up the road, of which Horsens was honestly the strongest rider of Intermarché, and the rest of the breakaway riders gently, one by one, dropping off the front. And the action came on the fourth last San Luca, is where I saw it at least, where UAE had been keeping control for the fifth last and the fourth last San Luca climb, and then we suddenly saw moves on the fourth last San Luca climb. We saw the likes of Remy Rochat for Cofidis making a move towards the front, trying to catch up with the man himself up front, Colbert Golsons for Intermarché. Bakelans also joining that Rochat move, but he had a chasse patate and Rochat had a mechanical. So in the end, neither of those riders actually made it
I'm
to the
not
front.
convinced Rochat had a mechanical. I'm not convinced.
I would have faked it.
Yeah, could have been a Remco situation from the Vuelta. I got a puncture. No 3-kilometer rule for you, Remy. Sorry, go on, Benji.
Yeah, UAE was pacing quite hard behind with Micah, but not at an insane pace yet. I do feel like riders by UAE were already dropping without doing the most of the work. I think when Micah went to the front, that's when the tempo kind of started going up. And we saw it going up even more the second time. Well, the next time they go over the San Luca climb, the third last San Luca climb. And we saw more action there, right? Like UAE was pacing with Micah, Ulisi, Hirschi, with Formolo and Poggi in the wheel of that. So to me, it was clear that it would be similar to the Pogačar launches we've seen in the past, right? Where Formolo does the lead up for Pogačar, but we saw some attacks by other riders on that climb too, right? Like a Gegenhardt?
I don't know if that was on the descent or what. I because the camera work was a little bit shoddy. They don't like to have the motorbikes too close in front of them on the descent going into it because it's super fast, because the guys know every corner because they do it 6 times and they've done it for years, a lot of them. I don't know whether they attacked there or just at the top going into the descent because, yeah, Demarchi, Gegenhardt, I'm not sure who else tried to get ahead. I have to say, apart from those two, absolute shocker for Ineos in Israel today. Like, you look at Israel's team, it's a really good team for this race. Dylan Teuns, Mike Woods, Fulsang, Demarchi, who I think has won Trevale Vaticine and Giro dell'Emilia before, Simon Clark, and I don't expect Corbin Strong to be doing well on this parkour. And they're just not competitive whatsoever. They weren't even making, I don't think, the group of 2015 latest. So they're getting relegated. It's been a shocking season, and it's not finishing well either for that team. And so a lot of guys getting paid a lot of money who aren't performing when the chips are down on that team, and whether that's their fault, whether that's the team, I don't know. Some of Fulsang's comments, if I was a prospective team looking at him, uh, left a lot to be desired in the last couple of weeks. Anyway, before we get to the second last San Luca mention on the 3rd of October, which is in 2 days, on Monday, one day for me, because it's Sunday for me right now, the Zwift Hub goes on sale. It's not too late to pre-register. Zwift are breaking down the barriers to indoor training by making the most affordable indoor trainer at that sort of level, back wheel off indoor trainer that's easier to set up than any other trainer on the market, coming pre-installed with Shimano, SRAM, or Campag, a cassette of your choice, a speed of your choice. So to sign up for notifications for when the Zwift Hub goes on sale, or to find out more about Zwift and the new smart trainer, head to Zwift.com down below. But this is where I think UAE were a little bit lacking in creativity, in that I think they had overall the strongest team. And when that Damarki move is gone, they had a decision to make going into the descent, going into now second last San Luca, was it? Maybe I've skipped one. I don't think I have. They could have sent Ulysses with them, and then you have a group of Damarki, Gegenhardt, Ulysses ahead. Now Movistar have to spend Sosa or Valverde to chase, or someone else has to chase. Instead, they get Ulysses, who I think was very strong, to chase the entire move, to pace the whole descent, to then pace the half of second last San Luca, not using Formolo either. Formolo never hits the front for a meaningful reason in this race. It's not how I would have played it, because Benji, if Pog's the strongest, it doesn't matter. He wins. He gets the front. But if he's equal, if he's 5% less, well, then he's not going to win. So, or do you think that's too, like, do you think Ulysses going ahead is not a good situation for them in that group?
I think it would be a good situation. I agree that they could have played it differently, but I think they started this race with the plan that Pogačar has the lead with most of the races that Pogačar is here, and that they didn't necessarily adapt to whatever was happening on the road and still thought their plan was a good idea at that point. Then I think it's not a terrible plan either. Like, pacing all out for Pogačar, there's a significant chance that a top form Pogačar destroys everyone once you do that. But the question is, was he going to be a top form Pogačar today? And that's the thing that we saw a bit later. We saw all the moves getting caught back by the pacing of UAE. Basically, everybody's caught. Plan is basically simple for UAE. We got to launch Pogačar at some point. That's kind of the plan. But it was not UAE that made the first attack. It was on the second last San Luca when an attack came from an unexpected corner, the corner of Eolo. Lorenzo Fortunato was like, come on, big guns, I'll show you what I've got. He goes off the front, and we see a response by the likes of Pogačar and Enric Mas, and the rest had some issues following, I guess, but also Fortunato just didn't hold on for much longer. And we had Pogačar and Mas up the road, right?
The Pozzovivo erasure. Pozzovivo,
Yeah,
I believe, was there for a little bit. I mean, Ulysses and I'm not sure who it was. I thought it was Palance, but it wasn't. It must have been Hirschi. The UAE guys, like, they reduced this group. I couldn't see. The Yates were gone. Israel were gone. Godou I couldn't see. I think it was Mollard. Ruben Fernandez looked okay. Padun and Uran were there. But yeah, like, this group was 15, 12 deep before Fortunato attacked, which of course was a terrible idea. Like, Fortunato could not have had worse tactics in the last 20 kilometers of this race. Like, unbelievably bad, but exciting nonetheless, I guess. And this is where Mas showed his hand with attacking Pog over the top of Fortunato, drop spots of Vivo, who goes to the back of the group with Formolo, and Valverde, who was sitting on marking group 2. And I think Mas almost overplays his hand here. where on the San Luca climb, it's the steep bit, there's the S, there's a twisty bend, and then it levels off through a narrow little arch, and then they go up, and then it flattens off a bit. There's like a last 700 meters, it's like 6-7%, not as steep. And Mas hits Pog, attacks him again, and I think attacks him kind of twice. And Pog looks under pressure, but Mas doesn't fully commit to it. Maybe it was on his limit, but Pog was definitely under pressure. And I thought, ooh, first of all, Enric, I'm not surprised you got good legs, because in the World he had great legs. He was stronger than Remco in the last week. Secondly, now you've shown Pogačar your hand. Now Pogačar knows I can't trust that I'm just going to drop you on the last San Luca, whereas maybe Pog would have been overconfident before then. And also Mas could have played Valverde behind. Did you think, I don't know, I don't think Mas thought he could actually go clear there and hold it for 15 Ks.
I don't think he had that confidence either, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe he wanted to know before they reached the last San Luca, okay, how are my legs compared to the others? What if I go now and see who is able to respond and how Pogačar is looking when I respond, that I know what I need to do as tactics on the last climb? Do you think that's a viable option as well? A possibility that he tried to test the waters?
I think so. That would make sense because, he could see, okay, Pog was really, really struggling to react. And they did that second last one quicker than the last climb. They did that in 5:50. And the last climb was done in 6 minutes. So that was 7.27 watts per kilo for Mas and Pogačar. So, flying on that last lap. They get to the descent. Pogačar and Mas are relaying. Neither is really committing. Pogačar through a technical corner. Mas nearly dies behind him. He fishtails a little bit for braking, but Mas is in the drops. I mean, he's descending and looks different to the Tour, that's for sure. So he's changed that. But behind, Uran's attacked the group because Formolo has been neutralizing everything for Pogačar. Good tactics. Fortunato's just been attacking for no reason. He's 50 kilos attacking on full flat uphill. And Pozzovivo, Uran go clear, good descenders, I think Uran is, and then Valverde bridges to them. And so now for Mas, he should sit on because he's got Bala coming back. Bala could attack, but that's all in theory because when Valverde comes back, Uran immediately attacks the group. I thought Valverde was going to attack the group because that would make sense, right? Because that's what Remco did for Almeida last year in the six-act race. He didn't. I knew he wouldn't do it. And in fact, you see Uran attack, and it's Mas that has to shut it down. And I'm like, no. This is all the wrong way around. Eventually, they got it right. Valverde leading out Mas, who then gives Pogačar the wheel, sits on Pog's wheel. Pozzovivo there, Uran there. What did you, honest hand on heart, Benji, did you think Movistar were going to stuff it when you saw the camera shot going under the arch into the base of San Luca?
I think the scary thing that I was thinking was, you just said it. They have Valverde in that group. When Valverde was spacing, that's when I thought, okay, this is going to go okay. My fear was going to be that they would let Valverde sit on and hope that he could sit on until the end and have a sprint against the others at the end. That's my fear, what they could have done. But when I saw Valverde at the front, I was expecting Mas to be able to have some attack, and it would be a question of, can Mas actually pull it off again and put Pogačar in enough trouble to get him off the wheel this time around? Then the producer started showing Fortunato, and I started enjoying Fortunato for about, what was it? Felt like a decade, but a good 30 seconds?
I mean, you're going to have to go and get a coffee, Benji. I don't know what time it is there. You organise this race on a Saturday. You block off the streets of Bologna. You put up fences. You have hundreds of people working on it. You spend thousands of euro organising it. You have Rai broadcast it, except they don't even bother to broadcast it. We have thousands of people using a VPN to watch this goddamn race in Italy because they can't watch it any other way. We've sat through, the riders have done 200 kilometers. The teams have spent hours getting there, thousands of euro in logistics to get there. You have arguably the best rider in the world in Group 1. You have an Italian in Group 1 as well. You have motorbikes ahead. You're on the final climb of the day, and you don't show the fucking winning move what is the producer doing? Fortunato's not even the best placed Italian in the race. They showed him for 40 seconds uninterrupted. They did not show Group 1, except from the rear end camera shot of them entering the San Luca climb. What the fuck were they thinking? Like, this keeps happening in cycling. Like, how can you miss the winning attack? Like, we sit through Hamilton Grand Tours all the time, but whatever. But like, this is obvious there's going to be something happening. Makes no sense. Terrible. Must attacks Pog. And that's it. He holds on and is able to distance them with Valverde. I presume Valverde just did a good lead out and Must dropped Pog, and then Pog was able to beat Pozzo for third. But I wasn't surprised, actually, Benji. I was surprised Must went so early, to be honest. I thought he'd go on the S-Bend, but yeah, what a move from Enric. Like, his first one-day win ever.
It's crazy. I was not expecting Must to win this race because I was not expecting Must to win any one-day race. And to see him do it in such a way where he's so aggressive throughout the parkour, as well as something we would not expect from a Must 2 years ago, for example. And he's become so much more confident in his own moves and himself, it seems, on the road during the Vuelta as well, compared to, for example, after the Tour where he was so, I don't know, he was being criticized for descending. He knew his descending was bad. He stated it that he needed to work on it. He seems to have worked on it based on what I can view because he is in the drops in descents. It's fascinating to see him win this race. I'm happy that he wins this race because it's been a year and a half since he won anything. Like, I think so, at least, when it comes to Enric Mas. Second in the Vuelta every time. That's just, it's wonderful to see. But when it comes to Pogačar, he's not in top form. Let's be honest about it. Top form Pogačar stays with Mas and tries to beat him at the end. That's how I see that. But could it be that the effect towards Ineos, the effect towards Nella Philippe, the effect towards Pogačar is related to them riding world champs and coming from Australia recently? Or do you think they were just not in the race today?
Pog's got an excuse. I mean, Pog was pretty close to pretty good, but yeah, maybe missing 1 or 2%. That's definitely excusable. I would say Ineos having no one in the top 10, a little bit less excusable. Did Danny Martinez, Rodriguez, he was injured, I know, in the Vuelta, but yeah. Did Adam Yates do the world champs? Simon Yates? So
Adam did, I think.
Adam did he?
I don't know. I don't remember anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe
anyway, not good from Ineos. Israel, no one in the top 10. So relegation is pretty much done. Lotto as well, no one in the top 10. Movistar, 300 points. EF, 85. So, yeah, that's just points on points for them. And, I will do the top 10. Mas Pogačar, Pozzo Vivo, Valverde, 4th. Uran, 5th. Fortunato, 6th. Fernandez, 7th. Mollard, 8th. Formolo, 9th. Stora, 10th. And I just think an interesting case study where Pogačar wasn't the strongest today. UAE's tactics presupposed that he was the strongest, and it didn't work out. And by the time they realized he wasn't the strongest, it was too late because they'd burnt the whole team. So, as I know hindsight, but I would have played Formolo a bit earlier because really he didn't impact the race at all. Formolo, he just finished 9th, and okay, he marked Fortunato in Group 2 a little bit, but I think he could have impacted the race a little bit more earlier.
Do you think they could have played it similar to the one-day races they had in the earlier part of the season, the ones without Pogačar, where Corvi went up the road, and then Pollans and so forth, and they kept going and attacking left and right? On one end, you create situations where Pogačar might not be in the ideal spot if you've got riders up the road and not necessarily plenty with them anymore. But they have enough riders to do that tactic with riders up the road and still have riders with Pogačar. So I think they could have played it more offensively throughout the parkour. But I also think that going into this race, if you have Pogačar in the team, their tactic was not necessarily something that you would say, oh, that's garbage before the race. It's a tactic that everybody before the race would have said, I understand if you think that Pogačar is strong, that you play this out, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But even so, it could maybe put Pogačar in a seat a little bit. with Mas having to chase on that second last San Luca with Ulisi ahead instead. Could have been a little bit different. But anyway, great race. Shame it's difficult to watch, but it is a fantastic race every year and high-level performance from Mas. We have Lombardia in a week. He's definitely shot himself up probably the betting for that race. I'm not sure if he's doing Tre Valle Vaticine midweek, which is another .pro race, I think. But yeah, Mas is someone not to be trifled with in Lombardia, with longer climbs too.
I think talking about coverage, you mentioned it about the men's race, but the women's race had no coverage at all. So it was really hard to follow that one. I think Longa Borghini won that one, but she seemed to have just jumped on the one San Luca climb that there was in that race, because they only have one in the women's race. Like, why don't they have more than one San Luca climb in the women's race? I really don't get that. It's like a UAE Tour stage. It's flat and San Luca. I don't get it. It can be more.
I think because of scheduling and they have it on at the same time, the women's race, so they have to have the women, I think, finishing on San Luca before the men enter the circuit. That being said, like, they could start them earlier and actually do some other climbs preceding it, one would think. But yeah, there's delayed coverage of that, I think, on Rai, so like no one outside of Italy is going to be able to watch that. But yeah, Longa Borghini won, which with an attack we haven't seen yet, ahead of Ewers and Bertizzolo. So Longa Borghini still good at the back end of the year. That's all from us. Emilia, and some transfer news and non-news. We'll be back maybe midweek. Will depend. No promises. But otherwise, we'll see with the Lombardia preview on about Wednesday. Ciao.